Final sitting day and everything else, the headlines around the country, we'll get across them now. Daily Telegraph's journalist James Willis, who had a front page today, we'll get into that too. Deputy Executive Director at the IPA, Daniel Wild, welcome to you both, gentlemen. Let's start. That deal done on the guillotine motion between Labor and the Greens. Now, a guillotine motion for people at home is that you agree that all these bills will go into a set time period, so debate is cut off. They're basically put on through the Senate, forced into a vote. There's no discussion, very little amendments, if any. That was done, 30-something pieces of legislation. Now, James, I'm not going to be a hypocrite here and say that guillotines haven't been used before, but it is unusual to see one of this size. 30 bills in it. That says to me, when I used to run the Senate program for Robert Hill, who was the Senate leader, Labor's been lousy at managing its time to get to this point in the calendar and have to ram all of this through. This looks to me, again, they are clearing the decks for an early election. What do you think?
Yeah, that's a fair take, Peter. And I think once again, we are seeing that they are incapable of doing anything without getting into bed with the Greens, who the majority of Australians did not vote for. But the reality is, with the Greens controlling the Senate, Adam Bandt is most probably the most powerful politician in the country. And so to get this legislation through and they get a bit of a pat on the back to say, oh, we passed all these bills without proper debate, without proper scrutiny, God knows what is in some of these bills. The devil will be in the detail, I suppose. But once again, they have had to make concessions to the Greens, which are not in the best interest of Australia. There's a massive social housing energy fund. Good luck to that. I think the proof will be in the pudding there. But critically, they've had to allow strict laws to come into place that will stop, basically choke foreign investment on coal and gas. It's a sovereign risk, once again, scaring off foreign investors and local investors with this fund and the deal they've had to do there. So, look, they might get a pat on the back on the way out the door on the last day, but I think it's a very, very concerning deal for Australia. And once again, Adam Bandt pulling all the strings in Canberra.
Yeah, I just want to underscore this for people at home. What James is talking about there is not that the Parliament was doing its job, that it should do anyway, to look at legislation in an orderly way, but there was a blood price paid on this package of legislation by the government with your money. $500 million, so $500 million put on the table for social housing upgrades, as if we're not spending enough there anyway. No coal, oil or gas funding to come out of the future Made in Australia bills. They were in the package. Reforms to the RBA back on the table. An end to commercial financing of fossil fuel projects overseas and more. Daniel Wild, this is what makes policy people like you and me so angry. This is a bastardisation of the Parliament.
Well, that's right. I think it's a bad day for democracy and a bad day for Australia. I think it sort of bookends the 47th Parliament of the Commonwealth of Australia, which has been a very bad parliament for our country. This is a government that is much more radical than Whitlam. I think you did a great job in your monologue in outlining all of the various policies that have not served our national interest. There's been a lack of debate. We've seen this with the social media ban proposal with just 24 hours consultation and a 3-hour Senate committee hearing process for a policy that would change the regulatory architecture of how Australians access the internet. We've seen it with misinformation laws, where they had just a 1-week consultation period for the second incarnation of those laws. And indeed, it goes to the whole energy policy agenda that we've been discussing and mass migration. Australians never voted for mass migration. We've had over 1 million migrants arrive here on a net basis under this government. As you identified, this is making us poorer with 6 consecutive quarters of negative per capita growth, plus the social and cultural problems that we have. There's been no debate about this policy and many others, Peter. So I think that this chaotic end to what is the 47th Parliament of Australia, in all likelihood, they might have a couple of sitting days next year to get the budget through. But I think it bookends a very bad period of time for our nation.